The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast NH. This is a podcast designed by writers for writers on the journey to being published. Joined Mandra Biscornet.
It was so healthy and nutritious.
Deborah Monk.
Can we open each podcast with a dance number?
Shelly Devlin.
It was so full of inspiration and sparkles.
Every Tuesday morning live on YouTube. And make sure you subscribe to catch the podcast anytime on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, or your favorite podcast catcher. It's time to be inspired, feel empowered, and be well with the Writer's Block Podcast NH.
And welcome to the Writer's Block Podcast. I'm Mandra.
I'm glowing Debbie.
And I'm Shelly. Thank you for joining us at the Writer's Block, where our mission is to inspire, empower, and to help people be well. We're streaming live on Facebook from the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, so be sure to check us out there. Today, we're going to take it back to some memoir writing. And we've often talked here on the Writer's Block about our concern for our loved ones bleeding onto our pages as we tell their stories, our stories. And a while back, we spoke with Sophie Monk, Deb's daughter, about appearing in Debbie's fiction work. But a memoir is a whole nother level of vulnerability. Sophie's going to be joining us again today. Hi, Sophie.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
We are so happy to have you because today we want to get some perspective and help navigate what it is like to see yourself show up on the pages of a memoir. Because how do you think it will be different from when you read your mom's fiction works and saw yourself kind of appear in some ways in those fictional characters?
I think for me personally, it's not going to be drastically different, only because I did see myself so much in her other books. But this time, as I said on the last podcast, there were things that I was unsure if were influenced by me.
Right.
I'm like, you don't know. And a lot of the times I'll be like, Mom, I can't believe you said this. And she's like, that's not you. And I'm like, it is. Whereas this time she can't say that.
That's right.
She can't come back with it's not you, because it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sophie, you haven't read any of it yet, correct?
I have not, no. Okay. I mean, I feel like I've experienced it. My mom's very vocal about her feelings, so I don't think there will be too much. I don't think I'll be surprised too much.
Okay.
But that's being said before I've read it, so I'm not entirely
Because that's a good
sure.
point. This is not published yet, Deb.
Right.
This is like the one thing she hasn't published yet.
Yeah, just the one.
Just
I
the
mean,
one.
you know, she's light years ahead of us and a few other things, but still working on it.
So how do you think we can help those family members that are in our memoir? How do you think we can help them feel safe or kind of guide them through the reading or being involved in something like that?
I think probably just the honesty before they read it and making sure that they're prepared and know what to expect. Mm-hmm. I do think because my mom, I said before, like my mom hypes me up quite a lot. Like she sees me in a different light than anyone else does. So I think even for myself, and so she might have a conversation with me after this podcast, but if there are some really hard times, or I know that in high school we didn't always see eye to eye and we're very different. Like my mom and I are very, very different. So the way she sees certain things play out and the way I see them are going to be completely different. True. So I think just the warning and knowing what I'm getting myself into. Whereas if I start reading it thinking I'm going to get all the praise that I normally do get, and then I don't, that might be a little, I might take
things jarring.
Yeah, yes. And especially if I'm not ready for it. Right. Whereas if as long as you have the warning and you know what you're getting into before you actually start reading the words on paper.
So would it be a situation where you would want to maybe read sections ahead of time?
I think because if you are involved, once you start, you're not going to really be able to put it down. I think it's one of those situations. I have a hard enough time walking away from books as it is. Once you get...
So you want to read the whole thing?
I think so, yeah.
Because it's not only about you, Sophie. It's about your mom's life, which is involving other characters.
Right.
And Deb had some real resistance with some of the other characters because a story can't just be all good.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So there's going to be some times with other characters that are connected to you, and that's a whole different set of emotions.
Right.
Oh, I see you're saying, so kind of not only would she feel protective of herself, she might feel protective of the other people in the book that I'm writing about. Right. That's a great question.
I think if you're going to write a memoir, you have to be prepared for everyone's reaction. And I think as people related to someone who's going to write it, I have to be prepared for it's her version. And I think that's good. Growing up, especially this past year, I've realized that everyone's version of the same thing is completely different. So I think you have to go into it appreciating that it's her version, and I can't change it. I can't say she's wrong. It's her version, which is going to be completely different than mine.
This apple didn't fall far from the tree.
Well, not everybody's going to view how they are portrayed in a memoir the same.
Right.
They're not going to have such an open-minded viewpoint. So, Mandra, in your case, is there anyone in your memoir that maybe isn't portrayed in a positive light all the time?
All the time, right? Yes. So there are times when, they may be, or situations where it not so much.
So how would you approach either communicating with that person beforehand or just hoping they don't buy the book? What is?
I think 100% you have to offer. Just like I've offered to Sophie, I've said you can read this beforehand and you have the power. Anything you're not comfortable with, I will take out.
Right.
And I've offered the same thing to Jonathan. Now I think Sophie will read it. I think Jonathan won't. And then I think after the fact, when his mom says, "Hey, Jonathan, this is what's going on in your life," he's going to be like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And at that point, it'll be, "I gave you the chance."
No, not at all. But I think in fairness to someone, maybe would you offer a name change? If I was writing it, I know that I wouldn't change any of the facts. So if someone did something in a negative light and that's how I have to portray them, honestly, and if they don't like it, they shouldn't have participated in the activity that caused the negative turn of events for me. So I wouldn't take it out. I might offer them a name change.
Absolutely. And where I'm dealing with a lot of medical professionals that, we were there so long, clearly mistakes were made. I will be changing some names, and I'd also kind of morphed a few characters so that it's not, this doctor, but sort of a doctor that represents those couple of them. So it's not any one person. But yeah, offering to read ahead for people that you're very close to, or anyone that you need like legal vetting from. I mean, you have to get some permission to put people's names in, changing names. And then also having that conversation with the people that you're close to, just like what you said, this was my experience. I'm writing it from my perspective, and things have changed since then. And we've all grown, and that was a moment in time, and this is, how it went down from my perspective.
And I think it could domino. It could domino from there. Like, I have a character in my book that is a cousin. I would meet with her. I've offered to meet with her to talk about it and do a name change. But her mother, I don't care. Because it's going to domino from there. It could be Sophie's father's sister. It could be, it could just keep dominoing to either piss people off or not, or hurt them or not. And that isn't the intent, of course.
So you have to kind of keep it close, with the people that most matter and continue to be in your life and whatnot. And then there's going to be kind of peripheral people that, that mom, she might not even be in the book.
She may not even read it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody needs some haters, though. It's good for marketing. Just saying.
Some good negative,
I'll look for some haters
on Amazon.
Yeah.
I would say you also could offer somebody a chance to have a makeup session where, okay, this person wronged me, they're in the memoir, and we made up, and then maybe add an afterword that says, this person was clearly portrayed in a negative light. This was that example, and we ended up making up later on as the book was coming to an end.
Yeah. And I think you can also be careful. There are going to be situations where, I know I've written some scenes that were a bit inflammatory. They were good, they were true, but because they were so extreme, I realized, that isn't really, I don't want to distract you with the extremeness of that moment. I can take that out and I can use another one that can still show what I was trying to show in the relationship, how, whatever the message I was trying to give.
Was that one necessary to
is that
be
the best?
in the book, or is there something different?
Right.
Yeah.
So I know that I would have offended some people, and I've changed that. I've changed those because that wasn't what I was trying to do, and that wasn't the point. I didn't need that.
Right. Now, what about, are you interested at all in reading about things that you weren't there for, or that happened before you, or like, is there a curiosity?
Yes and no. I think some things are better left unknown. And
that's what we need to get to.
I love it.
Any chance you could tell me what those
would
things
that
are?
be? She won't give you those chapters.
I don't really know it because I don't know them, I suppose. Yeah, I know that there's a lot of situations that my mom and I and my family and me, like, there's plenty of situations that I've been that my mom hasn't been involved in, and there are plenty vice versa. And as a parent, a lot of people had to go through her to get to me. So any of those experiences that I was involved in, there obviously was a lot more behind closed doors that I didn't know about. So I do think I probably will find some things out, but I think I've also, going through anything that my mom and I have gone through, I've learned so much in the past, 10 years of just so many people changing, so many conversations I didn't know happened, so many things that happened before me, so many things I thought happened one way and then later I found out happened another way. Right. So I do think that I'm hoping I know most of everything, but I know that there's so much that I don't know. But again, it's my mom's experience, so.
Well, I mean, we all think, when I started this memoir, I thought it was about me and of course would include everybody. But as Sophie was going on this amazing trip that she decided to take, that ended up playing out in my memoir so much. So in a way, I almost feel like this is a memoir of Sophie's blossoming as a woman, and then my kind of seeing that happen behind the fact.
So what trip did she take? How long were you? How long and where did you go? Just so people have an understanding, because it plays into your memoir that you thought was done, and she hadn't even taken the trip yet.
And then right.
Yeah.
So I spent 13 months away. I moved to Australia for a year on a year-long working visa. Wow. And the day that visa ran out, I flew from Australia to New Zealand, did a month on a road trip around New Zealand, both North and South Island, and then surprised Mom at home.
Right.
Now, and were you by yourself? Were you?
So I went out there by myself.
Wow.
And so I went out there by myself, and maybe a month and a half into it, I met a girl, Taylor, who's from England, and I spent the rest of my year with her. So.
What an experience.
It's amazing.
Yes.
That's so awesome.
She scuba dived on the Great Barrier Reef. She went skydiving. She went to surf camp.
And how old were you, Sophie, when you boarded this plane to leave the nest of your mom?
22.
22.
Yeah.
Nice.
So how did that trip play? Because you met her out
I did. I went to Bali.
You went to Bali.
But it was the watching her do this, seeing her. So actually, if this might be a good time to read this part.
Sure.
This little snippet. So Sophie hasn't read this.
Hold on, Sophie.
Okay.
Oh, God, Jonathan, get the tears ready.
Sophie has a backpack. Oh, lovely. Sophie has a backpack, a year-long work visa for Australia, and 7 days reserved at a hostel in Sydney. Nothing else. I am watching her beautifully balanced between being smart, prepared, and organized, while at the same time being arms open wide to letting the experience be what it will be. And she's doing it all by herself. I am in awe. I am full of pride and empty arms. The part that stuns me the most is how did I miss the development of her wings? I birthed her. I weaned her. I've tried to protect her, teach her. I've been her biggest fan, her punching bag, her safety net. I let her walk when I was afraid. I saw her develop from an infant to a toddler, from a little girl to a young lady, from a struggling teen to a college student. I am Mama Bear, and I've watched her like a hawk. Yet somehow I didn't see the wings. Have they been hiding under her shirt, little bud wings that suddenly sprouted? Have they always been there, folded, just waiting for her time to fly? If we wait too long to use our wings, do we forget we even have them? When we get older, do we doubt our ability for them to hold us up, so we decide to walk instead of fly? Do they atrophy and fall off if we don't use them? Sophie loves to tell the story how I tortured her when she was in 3rd grade. To get great pictures of her, I put her in one of my nightgowns in the middle of winter and piggyback carried her into the woods behind our condo. She wanted to wear boots, but I told her angels can't wear boots, at least not when they have their wings on, and I was letting her wear my white feather wings that were almost as big as her. The part in this story that she doesn't remember is that she asked me if she could do this after she saw the photos I did in the wood wearing those same wings. I look at the black and white picture of me lying in a pile of leaves wearing that filmy nightgown and beautiful white wing feathers. Right beside that photo is the one of my little Sophie wearing the same nightie and the same wings, leaning up against a tree and looking up through snow-covered branches as if she could see something the rest of us couldn't. I had wings. I gave her wings. Did I clip mine too tight, I wonder? Does being a mother mean sacrificing your own wings? Can wings grow back? Watching Sophie get ready for her trip, I am inspired by her bravery. I'm also getting a kink in my neck, straining to see if there are still buds of wings hiding under my own shirt.
And there's not a dry eye on the stage.
Oh boy.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's good, huh?
That was really good.
That's really good.
Yeah, so as you were reading that, I was thinking, you said like I was letting her wear the rings, and in my head I was thinking, letting me, I didn't want to, but like you said, I didn't remember.
Exactly.
And then you went right into, she asked for this. So I will say I probably did ask, but I also didn't ask to do it in the snow, whereas yours was in the fall on leaves. I'll just throw that out there. But yeah, so that is, again, a memory that the second she started saying it, I knew what she was going to talk about, and then she finished it with something that I don't remember.
Right.
I don't remember asking. So again, it's another, I think I talked about that story for probably 5 more years, saying that you tortured me going into the snow.
Yes.
So I probably still talk about it.
You do.
Yeah. So that extra part that I don't remember.
That you asked.
Yeah.
And you can see like an 8-year-old girl when she sees a picture of her mom, a photo shoot type thing. Of course she's going to say, "Can I do it too?"
Yeah.
But she never tells that part of the story. She only tells how I was.
But for you too, Deb, that memory came up as she's leaving.
Oh.
And that flashed back. Like, how awesome.
Well, because I just got so much, I was so inspired. It was just, I literally didn't see it happen. It was like it happened overnight. She was my little girl.
You're a little bit like Willie Nelson in that you write your best stuff when you're completely tortured.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say completely stoned.
No.
But okay.
That dude doesn't write a good song unless he's homeless, and that's kind of where you're at. When you're emotionally rubbed raw, that's when you turn to the written word.
That is true.
As your,
that is true.
Your cathartic release.
Yep.
Well, and so I had no idea how much her trip was going to, because I had finished the memoir. I had sent it to the editor, and it came back, and I put it in a drawer. I didn't love it. I wasn't satisfied, and I had no idea that my trip, that her taking this trip, and then my trip going to see her. When I went to see her in Bali, I arrived 3 days early, and I don't know if you ladies remember, but I wrote to you. I just wrote the end. And there were some expletives at the beginning of the email because I wrote the end, which you haven't even still read. But it's another Sophie story. And I didn't realize how much watching her take this trip and then me going over and seeing her was going to play in my memoir. So she really, I know she turns up in everything that I do, but she's going to, I might have to say this one's written by Debbie and Sophie Monk.
There's another idea.
Oh, don't even joke.
Oh, you threw it out there, Sophie.
I know.
She's never going to let you live that down.
I have one more question for you, Sophie. My son will someday read my memoir, and he's very, very young now, and he was not around during the time that I'm writing about. So he's going to be reading about a time in his parents' life that he wasn't there for.
Right.
What advice would you give? Because I'm assuming your son, who is an adult, is going to be reading yours. My son's young. Any advice that you would give to our children when it's their turn to kind of pick up that book and read it?
Oh boy. Just don't take anything personal, I suppose. I think the thing that I'm most nervous about is reading about, like you said before, the things that happened when I wasn't around. I think we talk so much that the things I was around for, we've spoken about. So I genuinely
those won't surprise you.
Yeah, I have an idea of how she's feeling. And so I think it's more so of just remembering that as parents that you guys always have our best interests at heart, even when maybe you're making mistakes, even when maybe we weren't a part of the best interest, you hadn't even thought about us yet. Just remembering that it's separate to your personal relationship. Like her memoir and her views, as they've made us have the relationship we have today, so none of that should change after reading this. I hope.
There you go. Good advice.
That is good advice.
And there's something to I believe in transparency, and I believe in honesty, and if you're writing the book for the catharsis of it, you also have to be prepared. It's almost like you're having a discussion with the people that have not only wronged you, but who have done right by you, and the people that have supported you. And this is an opportunity to have that conversation without having to have it. Mm-hmm. You can go through all of that catharsis without having to actually go face to face with those people.
And I do think that there's a kind of pulls us back to Memoir of why are you writing it? You know, you may write that situation that Jonathan's talking about. You don't have to publish it. So the question is that I keep asking myself, that I keep asking you girls is, okay, what is someone going to get out of this? What is the point of it? Are you trying to inspire someone? Are you trying to, fiction is different. You're trying to entertain, but
sure.
A memoir, you want to have the reader. What do you want to have them take from the story? And so I know, with mine, I'm hoping, and that it's inspirational, that it reminds women to be as fully as they can be, and that to understand that there are going to be times in life when, for whatever reason, you don't have to, but you choose to dim your light, and that it can come back. And seeing Sophie develop like this is just I didn't realize watching her become a woman was going to help me become more the woman that I want to be. I didn't know that was going to be part of having a daughter. And that's all happened, she's 23, so that's been part of the...
Sophie, you're helping me become the woman I want to be as well.
I don't think you need much help with that. You're pretty good on your own.
Wow, that's a good one.
No.
Now, can we just cut back for a moment, because we do have it on tape, but didn't I hear Sophie say something about, we should write a story together?
Yes.
I did say it was an idea. I didn't say...
Well, since my novel...
But here, ideas manifest.
Yes,
That's right.
And when you're sitting next to Shelly,
right.
since the memoir is called Pursuit of Passion, and it's really about my view of passion, about the importance of having it and having lived without it, what if we now write, because Sophie's living such a passionate life, such an inspirational life, such a brave life, so not within the box, maybe we do a follow-up. Like the tour of passion. Me and Sophie go on a world tour.
The sequel.
Boy.
You're taking the dog.
Sequel.
Yeah. Now we're writing together, traveling together.
Yes. Sophie's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
I didn't hear a no. I'm going to take that as a yes.
Okay. I'll remember that next time I ask for something.
Well, Sophie Monk, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the Writer's Block.
Thank you.
Again. We appreciate that. Thank you for listening into the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. Please check us out at the Writer's Block NH Facebook and the Writer's Block Podcast on your favorite podcast catcher. May you be inspired, feel empowered, and be well.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.